because women are the heart of this nation, and we long for a genuine movement of prayer to sweep our country. Psalm 68:11 proclaims, "The Lord gave the command, and a great company of women brought the good news." The good news is this: we will love unconditionally. We will listen intently. We will serve, and we will earnestly pray. Because love is not silent, neither are we.
You're listening to the Courageous Women podcast with everyday stories from women full of faith and purpose to encourage you to be a courageous woman of prayer. Here is your host, Diane Strack.
Hi, I'm Diane Strack with Courageous Woman, and today I am bringing you one of the most courageous women I know, and a woman I greatly respect and love. Hi, Claire Culwell. Welcome to Courageous Women.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so glad you're here. And she has this awesome podcast called to Be Bold. And I love that. And if you haven't already heard her on She Loves Out Loud, you know that she is a twin abortion survivor. And wow, the courage to talk about that and to allow your story to be just spread open, your heart to be spread open. Claire, that's just absolutely amazing. And she has a new book. And the reason this is so important, there's several reasons it's so important that I want to tell you about this. And let me get the name of it right. Survivor, an abortion survivor's surprising story of choosing forgiveness and finding redemption. And the reason that this book is so important is, first of all, we want people to see Claire and understand that an unborn child is a real child, a viable child. And we want her to see that. Look at that beautiful face. Isn't she pretty? And to be able to say that this is a child that was saved, that has survived, and that they can understand that unborn children are real children. But another reason it's so important is that, as you know, in our society, there is a lot of protest. There are a lot of yelling about women having the quote unquote right to abort their babies. And because of that, we see censoring in the media. We see censoring on social media. And unfortunately, we've even seen some books pulled from retailers. So we don't want that to happen. And that's why we're talking. One of the reasons I'm sharing the importance of this book with you, so you can make sure you get it. We'll remind you about that again later, but it's all online booksellers, all store booksellers. You can get it everywhere. And we want you to make sure that you do that. So Claire, let's get started and talk about your story. You are a twin survivor. And for me, the most amazing part of your story, there's two parts that I think are just really amazing. One, of course, first of all, that you survived, but that your adoptive mother showed up at the hospital and was told, this child's going to need some special needs, attention, medical needs. She had to fight to get insurance. She told me that she did not know, they had no idea. The doctor said, we have no idea what she'll need. I mean, could be a lot, could be a little bit. We don't know. And the risk that it took for her to adopt you. So talk to moms out there, families out there who are praying and thinking about fostering or adopting. What can you tell them about taking that risk and what they might face?
Thank you. So I am an abortion survivor. I met my birth mother 11 years ago and found out the truth behind what caused all these complications for me. Never imagined that I would find out that I was a twin who had survived something that was meant to take my life, and that being a twin is what caused those physical complications for me. I went home from the hospital with a harness on my hips to put my hip back in place and cast on my feet to correct the club feet that I was born with. And over the course of 2 years, I went through multiple body casts to correct what had happened to my body. And obviously, when my parents were adopting, they didn't get the call they expected. They kind of thought, like maybe everybody else, that they would get this call that this healthy baby had been born and was ready for them to take home. But that wasn't the phone call they got. The phone call that they got was that there was a 3-pound baby girl available to adopt, but there were complications, and I wouldn't be released from the hospital until I was 2 months old. And we didn't know, just the journey that would be. And my parents had to trust God. They went home and they prayed about it, and they felt like God said, this is the baby for you, regardless of what happens, regardless of how it looks. I'm going to provide, and I'm going to complete your family in this way. And he has been faithful. I can do every single thing that you can do. I have an incredible life. I do have some lifelong complications, some pain. My body has been in a fight or flight mode, kind of like I'm constantly fighting for my life because my life was almost ended in the womb. And so it's been a journey, but I am so incredibly grateful that I have my life, that my family chose me. And because my family chose me, regardless of my complications, regardless of my disability, they raised me to respond to my birth mother in the way that I needed to, so that God could work in my heart and work in her heart and bring redemption to our story, even though there's so many painful and unexpected pieces to it.
And you have 4 children of your own.
I do. My husband and I have 4 children together. We have a blended family. I've been blessed to be mom to his 3 children, and then we have one biological child. My daughter, who's 8, who's not adopted, feels left out, and I think that's pretty cool. It just speaks to how adoption is so common and so welcomed in our family, as it should be.
And what an incredible, only God could take one of the most horrendous stories, right, and turn it into one of the most beautiful testimonies to say to people that love overcomes everything, and that we cannot just I think you and I talked earlier about, my husband said this morning that a paragraph is never the novel or the whole story. And looking at you in that hospital, that was a paragraph, just seeing what you might be, just 3 sentences of your life. But look what God has done, how beautiful you are, beautiful your family is, and the love of God that permeates out from all of you. And I see this beautiful ripple, this beautiful river of continued speaking out, not only for life, but for adoption as well. And so what Satan meant for good, God is certainly used. I'm sorry, what Satan meant for evil, God is certainly used for good. And so that's really amazing. I'm going to go back a little bit to about what your book is about, which is forgiveness and redemption. And I don't want to take away everything, because I know there's so much more. I saw your birth mother's video once, and I couldn't go through the whole thing because I was just bawling so much. But tell us about, I can imagine you, how old were you? You were 18, you said?
I was 21 when I met my birth
And
mother.
so you're so excited, right? You make the trip and you're holding your thank you card, and take us into what happened from there.
This was our second meeting, and I wanted to give her something that would just remind her of my gratitude towards her. I mean, I am so incredibly thankful for what she did for me. She gave me an incredible life through my family. And so I wrote on this card, "Thank you for choosing life for me." And I put it in with this gift I got for her. And I got there and I gave her the gift, and she cried happy tears. And then she opened the card and she read the words, and her everything changed. Everything about her changed. She began to cry and to tremble. And she said, "Claire, there's something I need to tell you." And we went in this back room, and she told me about the abortion procedure that her mother told her was the best thing for her. This abortion procedure that successfully took the life of my twin, and accidentally missed me. And all I remember from that moment was her just continuously crying and saying, "Claire, I'm so sorry. Your life is a miracle. I am so sorry. Your life is a miracle." And she told me that day, she fully expected me to run out that door and never look back. I mean, how could you forgive being unwanted, being rejected? As she told me I was, because she also told me that she went for a second abortion attempt in another state, and miraculously those doctors turned her away because of damage that they had done to the amniotic sac that I was in. And so I saw her pain in that moment, and I saw her tears, and I knew I had never experienced anything like that in my life, this deep pain that I saw. And she told me, this is my deepest, darkest secret. I haven't shared it with anyone. In fact, I just told my husband and I just told my children, but nobody has known, because this is the most painful piece of my life. And it changed everything for me. The doctors told me that my life would go back to normal, but it didn't. And so I knew in that moment, as I saw her pain, that the words that my parents had told me all my life, that God forgives, that he redeems, that he restores, that he wants to make something new, like you said, something good out of something evil. I knew those were true for me, but I also knew that it was true for her. And so I knew that the right choice, in order for me to heal, in order for her to heal, in order for God to be able to be glorified through this story, and for the unborn baby to be able to be humanized through this story, I had to take that first step. And I had to forgive the birth mother who didn't want me, who rejected me, who aborted me. And so I chose to forgive her that day. And I choose every single day still to wake up and to forgive. There's pieces of my story that are messy. It hasn't been easy. It's been a journey of figuring out, what does it mean that I'm an abortion survivor? What does it mean that I am rejected and unwanted and society doesn't want to recognize that I exist? What does that mean? And I may never know. I may never have those questions, but I can trust the God that forgives and redeems and restores, because he is continuously, and he will continue to bring something good out of something that is hurtful or evil or harmful.
Well, we see that his love produced a grace in you that is certainly not a natural grace for a human person, for a woman to have in that situation, and that the Holy Spirit literally came on you in those moments when you needed him, and he will do that for us. So many times we react to small things in conversations and arguments, and to think that in this moment that was so big that the Holy Spirit literally stepped in front of you as a very young girl, 21 years old, and began to give you enough grace to forgive your mother. So what did that look like? How did she receive that gift?
It's been an incredible journey. I can't say that it's been easy for her either. I was that reminder to her of what she had experienced, of what had been done to her and taken from her. I mean, nobody asked her what her choice would have been. Nobody said the words that she needed to hear, the words that every other woman is desperately wanting to hear in their moment of crisis, that they're wanted, that they're supported, and that they're loved, that they can do it, that they're worthy. And so it's been a journey, but as God has worked on my heart, he's worked on her heart. And she realized that the reason I was able to forgive her is because God has forgiven me for so much. And that was available to her too. And so I pray, I think that I am no longer the reminder of what happened to her. Instead, I'm a reminder of what God's done, and that this is our victory story, victory over what happened to us, what abortion did to us, but also knowing that one day Christ will come back and make all things new. And we have victory in that, because one day no other person will walk the face of the earth as an abortion survivor. No other woman will experience pain, the pain of abortion, like my birth mother has. And so she now has that renewed hope. And you said something earlier that just reminded me that I said, this is our victory story. And that's what I pray every day, that my birth mother will cling to, that this is our victory story. And the miraculous thing is that when my parents adopted me, they didn't know that I survived an abortion, but they named me Lauren Claire. I have a double name, but I go by my middle name now. And not knowing my whole story, my name, Lauren, means victorious one. And I just imagine a God that, this is going to choke me up, but I imagine a God that literally in the moment that I survived my birth mother's abortion, my mom was praying for a child and just desperately crying out to God for a child because she couldn't have her own.
Mhm.
And God said, you know what? I'm I'm going to be victorious. I'm going to pluck this child from this birth mother's womb and spare her life from something that was meant to destroy it so that you can be a mother, so that you can teach this child to grow up and love God and know his heart for others so that she can then go in turn and tell her birth mother one day that he feels that way towards her too. And that's my hope for every single woman who has experienced abortion, that they will know the healing power of Christ and that he wants to know them and that he forgives them and that he loves them.
Oh my goodness, what a story. Every person needs to hear this story, regardless of what you've been through or haven't been through, because this is a story of how God uses our pain. This is a story of dealing with rejection, which we've all felt before. And this is a story of forgiveness. So you've got to get this book. You've got to share it with everybody that you know. Pass it around. I'm going to order a bunch of them and give them out because the story is not just that you're an abortion survivor. The story is so much bigger than that. It's a story of God using every pain in our life and of God's healing. And I would say probably as you're going through your life, and you mentioned it, that every day you get up, right? And every day you have to fight this battle. You have to fight this battle in your mind and this rejection as the world continues to yell out that fetuses are nothing, right? That they're not real, right? So then you're constantly feeling this rejection. So I'm going to talk about that for a minute because I think there may be some women, and this is this podcast is called Courageous Women, and oh my goodness, are you a courageous woman every day? But there's a couple of things I want to talk about with you. And one is that we've gotten you out of your comfort zone here because you are an introvert, you say. So I want to go back to that in a minute because I believe there are a lot of introverts who are saying, God, how can you use me? So we're going to go back to that in a moment. But let's stay on this idea of what it feels like to have past pain and rejection. And what would you say to a woman right now who might be watching and perhaps her rejection was maybe as a child from her parents, or maybe a bad breakup, a divorce? Maybe she's just going through a difficult time in her career. You know, we face all these sort of rejections. What would you say to her in those moments?
You know, I think one thing I've learned as I've navigated my story and as I've heard the stories of hundreds of thousands of women across the country is that we all have pains, we all have struggles, we all have rejections, and we all just want to be seen and we want to be heard.
Mhm.
And the thing that I have been able to cling to that has been so helpful for me in my moments of why me, God? Why did you choose me for this? Why do I have to be an abortion survivor? Why does my story begin with rejection? Why am I a twinless twin? Why am I
Mhm.
missing out on the person I would have been closest to all my life? Um, the thing that I cling to is what God says about me, because circumstances change and circumstances can be hurtful and harmful and change the course of our lives. Yes. And I empathize with that. But our circumstances never change how God sees us. He calls us every single day from the moment he created us to the moment we go home to him. He calls us worthy and redeemed and loved and forgiven and children of God and valuable and worthy of his love. And so those are the things, I don't know, write it out. Put it on your mirror. Remind yourself, whatever you have to do. Some days I put it on the steering wheel of my car. You are worthy. You are valuable. These things don't define you. They're part of your story. Yes, I wake up every day and it will never change. I will always be an abortion survivor. But that's not what defines me. What God says about me is what defines me. And so that's what I choose to cling to. And so I hope that everybody listening today, that that's what you will be able to cling to too.
So starting as a 3-pound baby with a harness on her hips, and now you are literally running around the country and around the world, sharing the good news of hope, the good news of forgiveness, the good news of redemption, and of grace, of being healed in your heart. of grace. And you were telling me earlier about the opportunity in Times Square in New York, and that's coming up again in the fall. So just, can you give us just a real brief encapsulation, because it was so powerful, of how God worked in the midst of the protesters?
In 2019, Focus on the Family had an event in Times Square called See Life, and it had multiple testimonies of people who had been affected by abortion or who were passionate about life issues, and empowering women to know that they can do it, that they're supported, that they're worthy, and that people want to come alongside them. And it was an incredible thing. And the event ended with 3 abortion survivors. I was one of them who took the stage and shared our testimonies. All 3 of us had survived different types of abortion procedures. All 3 of us are actually adopted and have forgiven our birth mothers, and are using our stories to humanize the unborn child and to fight for women like my birth mother who feel like they don't have a choice. And there were some protesters there, and they were not happy. They were kind of shouting and chanting, and they had signs, and they even dropped a fake bomb package there just to get rid of us, I'm sure. And I watched as I took the stage with these 2 other abortion survivors. As each of us told our stories, they got quieter, and they got quieter, and they got quieter. And then they put a live ultrasound up on the Jumbotron in Times Square. And Times Square was completely silent as you heard this heartbeat of this baby, and saw it on the screen. And I watched as the protesters, people who were screaming, "My body, my choice," they turned around and walked away, because they could no longer argue that that was not a human baby with a beating heart, that science and medical technology shows us is human and deserving of life. And so it was an incredible moment, because I have been rejected. I have been told that my story shouldn't be told. And I think the reason is that when you look at the life, at the humanity, at the face, and know the name of an abortion survivor, you're recognizing the humanity of that person. And so you have to recognize the humanity of that unborn child. And my life, my experience, my existence even goes against every single argument, every narrative that they are using to say that women need abortion. What women need, and this is what we told people in Times Square, what women need is someone to come alongside them and tell them that they are worthy, that they can do it, that they don't have to do this alone, that they are supported through the community, through their church, through their family even. And that is what every single woman that I have talked to that has had an abortion tells me, that that's what they were looking for. And because they didn't have that, they turned to the abortion clinic, because the abortion clinic is over there like, this is your safe place. Come to us. You can trust us. And the church is saying, this is not your safe place. Don't come to us, because your sin is too messy. But that is what we need to change. That is the conversation that we need to have as believers, as women of God, of how can we support women? How can we support families and empower them to know that they can come to us? Because God, when God creates that life, that is not the sin. That is not something we should be afraid of or rejecting. That is something that we should be celebrating every single time that God creates a life, regardless of circumstance. And so it was an incredible moment to be a part of, for sure.
I can imagine. And talk about coming out of your comfort zone. You're standing up in Times Square saying this. And so that really, God has called you to many things. And that's just amazing that you're stepping forward. And I want to say right now, this is Claire Culwell. You can find out more at claireculwell.com. And I want you to get her book, Survivor. You can find it almost anywhere. And she's going to give us the full name again before we close. But I want you to pray for her. I'm hoping that today, as you hear her story, she'll be a notation in your prayer journal, and that you will regularly pray for her as she goes about battling this culture. And we were talking earlier that the AS, whatever, they get $200 million a year for puppy faces. And yet we, our churches, are we giving enough to sustain these women, not just for our pregnancy centers, but taking in single moms and helping them with their food and their rent and the different things that they need. But mostly, like you said, community, letting someone know. And if you're listening today and you know someone who's going through this, or they think they're going through this, or if you have been through this, we will pray for you. You can send an email to shelovesoutloud@gmail.com. We will be praying for you. And there are churches, there are pregnancy centers around the nation that will come beside you and minister to you. Claire, as we close, what would be the takeaway from your book, but also the takeaway from your message? There's been so many. So to try to bring it down to what you want women to know, I think part of it, what you said, I love what you said, that you sometimes put it on your steering wheel. You're valued, you're loved, you're worthy. I think that's huge. But I want to hear from you, when you decided to take your story and put it in written form, what were you hoping women would do as far as sharing that story? What were you hoping they would get?
I want people to know that, there's disappointment in all of our stories. And I think your husband, what he said is so incredibly powerful, because God, he really does. He sees the bigger picture when we don't, and we can trust him in every turn. I am an introvert. I remember the first time God called me on a stage, and I remember the first time I found out I was an abortion survivor. And I remember when I found out I was going to be a mother, and just so many milestones in my life that felt scary and uncertain and maybe even disappointing. And that might be your story too. But what I've realized along the way is that I can trust the God that sees the bigger picture, that wrote my story perfectly for me. And I can trust that he is going to bring something beautiful out of something that is so messy, so disappointing, and so scary. And he is going to reach in. If I allow him, he will reach into the trenches with me, and he will walk before me every step of the way. And so that would be my hope. Not only that people see what abortion is, what it does, and that God will give them a heart for women and for families and to come alongside them, but that they will know that the God of the universe wants to meet them in the trenches, and that they will make the choice to allow him to do that, so that he can work in their life in the same way that he's worked in yours and mine. Because my story, my redemption story, my victory story, that can be your story too.
Oh, you've been so wonderful. Thank you for taking the time to just open your heart and share. And the things that you've shared are not things that anybody can read in a book. They're things that came of a lifetime of grace and God's mercy, and just teaching those to you daily. But we can get them out of the book. We can read along with you and enter into your life and enter into your victory, which is exciting. And so thank you for being with us today. OneMoreChild.org is our sponsor, and we have work with adoption. I'm praying that if today your heart's been tugged about adoption, that you'll pray it through and don't stop. Don't stop praying it through until God either says yes or no. Just keep on praying, because if he puts it in your heart, he intends for you to think about it. And even if he does not lead you to, perhaps he's praying for others who need your encouragement, or to come alongside foster parents. So important. And One More Child, we have foster crew packages that you can learn from on how to come around foster parents and how to assist them. Claire, we are going to tell us the name of the book as we close.
Survivor. You can buy it anywhere that books are sold.
The story of healing and redemption and forgiveness. God bless you. Thank you for
so
joining Courageous Women.